In August 2024, the peaceful town of Yurimaguas, deep in the Peruvian Amazon, became the scene of a horrific crime. A 44-year-old Russian woman named Lyudmila Lazarenko was brutally murdered and dismembered at a spiritual healing center called Center of the Worlds. What was supposed to be a journey of spiritual transformation, filled with ayahuasca rituals, turned into a nightmare of violence and horror. To fully understand this story, we need to learn more about one of its central figures, Lyudmila Lazarenko. Born in Russia, Lyudmila was 44 years old, a woman deeply passionate about spirituality and travel. She was married, the mother of 2 young daughters, and lived in Thailand, where she ran her own spiritual healing center. Lyudmila was known for her kindness and warmth, qualities that echoed through the tributes left by friends and followers on her social media after the tragic event. On Instagram, she often shared photos of her adventures, usually surrounded by nature, with captions that reflected her passion for spiritual practices and her love for the Peruvian jungle, a place she described as her power spot. Lyudmila was a blogger and an avid traveler. In her final Instagram post, she expressed her excitement about the 2024 trip to Peru, which began in March that year. "I'm looking forward to this trip with great excitement," she wrote. That post is now filled with over 120 condolence messages from followers in Russian, English, and other languages, a testament to how loved she was. Lyudmila had a deep fascination with South America. She believed that the mysticism surrounding indigenous cultures and nature held the power to heal both physical and spiritual illnesses. This wasn't new to her. She had been a practicing shaman for 9 years, studying Amazonian rituals and ancient healing techniques. Her connection with Peru started back in 2022 when she met Pepe Ordóñez, the founder of Centro dos Mundos, during one of his visits to Russia. For context, Centro dos Mundos is a spiritual healing center located in Peru. Since meeting Pepe, Lyudmila had traveled to Peru at least 4 times to deepen her knowledge of traditional medicines like ayahuasca, a hallucinogenic plant used in purification rituals. Lyudmila's husband, who stayed in Thailand with their daughters, confirmed that the Peruvian jungle was one of her favorite places, a place where she felt truly connected to nature and animals. Beyond her passion for spirituality, Lyudmila was deeply devoted to her family. In her posts, she often spoke about her love for her husband and daughters, calling them her greatest treasure and love. She also had an adventurous side. She loved snowy winters in Moscow and the seafood from Russia's Far East. She even dreamed of turning her experiences in the jungle into a film with elements of mysticism and action, as she wrote in her journal. Among her belongings found after the crime, there was a plane ticket to Cusco in southeastern Peru, where she planned to continue her spiritual journey in the following days. Lyudmila lived to help others. A Spanish friend named Lucia described her as a bright, kind soul, someone always ready to help anyone in need. But tragically, that kindness may have been her greatest vulnerability. Lucia lamented how people like Lyudmila, on a quest for spiritual answers, often become easy targets for charlatans who prey on their innocence. What Lyudmila didn't know was that her path in Peru would soon cross with Ivan Kuzmin, a man whose interest in spiritual practices masked something far darker. Now let's meet the other central figure in this case, Ivan Kuzmin. Born in Ukraine, Ivan was 38 years old at the time. Unlike Lyudmila, who was driven by a genuine spiritual quest, Ivan had a much more troubled past. He was a martial arts instructor, specifically in capoeira, the Brazilian martial art known for its acrobatic movements and cultural elements. Later, Ivan moved to Russia, where he taught capoeira and got involved in meditation practices. But Ivan also had a dark side. Witnesses and Peruvian media sources revealed that he had struggled with drug addiction for years. Ivan first arrived in Peru on June 29, 2022, staying at Centro dos Mundos. He was initially a patient there and was later discharged. He returned to the center on June 21, 2024, just 1 day before Lyudmila arrived for her 3rd stay. According to Pepe Ordóñez, the founder of Centro dos Mundos, Ivan and Lyudmila met at the center about a year earlier, in 2023, bonding over a shared interest in ayahuasca and spiritual practices. But there were already signs that Ivan wasn't as emotionally stable as he appeared. Witnesses reported that he frequently consumed hallucinogenic substances in dangerously high doses, to the point where he was nearly expelled from the center for inappropriate behavior. Among Ivan's belongings found after the crime, police discovered a pipe, confirming his regular use of ayahuasca and hallucinogenic mushrooms. One witness who attended ceremonies at Centro dos Mundos reported that during a ritual, Ivan asked for an extra dose of a very strong plant, highlighting his pattern of substance abuse. Another source, quoting Ivan's sister, revealed that Ivan claimed to have mystical visions, including one where Lyudmila had saved him in a past life, and that he felt obligated to save her in this one. Ivan often referred to Lyudmila as pure love. Despite the appearance of a spiritual seeker, Ivan was clearly an unstable individual. During his arrest, Ivan displayed disturbing behavior. He violently resisted, tried to bite an officer, and reportedly laughed in a chilling, unsettling way as authorities took him away. His sister, in an interview, defended him, claiming he had never done anything wrong and was a kind person, but admitted that he was completely out of his mind at the time of the crime. What could drive a man with this background to commit such a brutal act against a woman he once called pure love? To understand the full context of this crime, we need to talk about the place where it all happened. The Centro de Desarrollo Integral dos Mundos, or simply Centro dos Mundos, is located 12 miles from Yurimaguas in the Alto Amazonas province of Loreto, Peru. Yurimaguas, known as the Pearl of the Huallaga, sits at the confluence of the Huallaga and Paranapura rivers, surrounded by the lush Amazon rainforest. It's a popular destination for foreigners seeking spiritual experiences, especially those involving ayahuasca, a hallucinogenic plant used in indigenous rituals for centuries. Centro dos Mundos was founded 17 years ago by Pepe Ordóñez, a self-proclaimed master healer. Pepe was born in Teniente Cesar Lopez in Alto Amazonas, Loreto. According to him, his healing abilities began manifesting at the age of 10, when he started spontaneously treating his mother and animals. By the age of 12, he was already participating in ayahuasca ceremonies within Loreto communities, solidifying his path as a healer. In addition to his spiritual work, Pepe also trained as an actor and theater director, which added to his charismatic and captivating personality. Centro dos Mundos promotes itself as a sanctuary for those seeking inner transformation and spiritual growth. On its official website, ayahuasca is described as a fundamental tool for purifying the human soul, eliminating negative energies, and healing diseases at their root. The center attracted foreigners from all over the world, offering mystical experiences through the use of hallucinogens, including ayahuasca, and, according to some sources, even San Pedro cactus, which contains mescaline. Mescaline, for those who don't know, is the hallucinogenic substance found in the San Pedro cactus. Pepe Ordóñez described Ivan and Lyudmila as regular patients who met at the center and developed a friendship. According to him, both seemed radiant and emotionally stable just days before the crime. Pepe denied that the center directly provided hallucinogens to guests, claiming that Ivan and Lyudmila consumed substances privately in their rooms, without the center's involvement. However, an administrator named Juan Carlos Villena confirmed that the two were at a nearby location consuming drugs when the crime happened. But what exactly is ayahuasca, and why is it so controversial? According to Russian addiction specialist Vasily Shurov, ayahuasca is an herbal brew traditionally used by Amazonian shamans in rituals to communicate with spirits. It contains around 20 different psychoactive compounds that affect serotonin receptors, leading to intense hallucinations. You can hear colors, smell sounds, or even feel like you're traveling through time, Shurov explains. However, he warns that ayahuasca can trigger schizophrenia-like states, delusions, and vivid hallucinations, such as visions of demons or feeling like you're in hell. For individuals with pre-existing mental health issues like Ivan, the use of ayahuasca can be especially dangerous, amplifying psychotic behaviors. Vasily Shurov points out that most of the time ayahuasca experiences are overwhelmingly negative. Many report terrifying visions, being tormented by demons or reliving past traumas. He claims he has never witnessed a single positive experience with the substance, and warns that it can cause persistent psychosis, such as hallucinogen persisting perception disorder, HPPD, where people see visual snow constantly or experience chronic derealization. In Ivan Kuzmin's case, the combination of ayahuasca, hallucinogenic mushrooms, and possibly San Pedro cactus likely amplified whatever mental instability he already had. Despite its spiritual reputation, Centro dos Mundos was no stranger to controversy. Former patients accused Pepe Ordóñez of harassment, claiming he took advantage of women during massage sessions, offering inappropriate touching under the guise of healing. Additionally, local sources suggested the center was never properly shut down during the investigation. Instead, it remained open and even welcomed journalists to showcase its activities, raising serious doubts about its transparency. Was Centro dos Mundos truly a sanctuary for healing, or was it a place where dangerous practices and a lack of proper supervision opened the door to tragedy? Now let's rewind to understand how Lyudmila and Ivan ended up at that fateful day, August 8, 2024. Lyudmila arrived in Peru in March 2024, 5 months before the crime, for yet another spiritual journey. It was her third stay at Centro dos Mundos since 2022. She returned to the center on June 22, 2024, just one day after Ivan, who arrived on June 21st. The two had known each other since 2023, when they first met at the center and formed a friendship based on their shared spiritual interests. A week before the crime, on August 1, 2024, Lyudmila and Ivan traveled together to El Saus Lagoon in Tarapoto, a region famous for its natural beauty. According to Pepe Ordóñez, the two seemed happy and in harmony. Ivan, who had already been at the center back in 2022, said he returned to find himself, while Lyudmila was focused on deepening her knowledge of Amazonian rituals. Despite their friendship, there were rumors that Lyudmila and Ivan had a closer relationship, possibly a romantic affair, something Pepe claimed he couldn't confirm. However, a close friend of Lyudmila firmly denied any romantic involvement, stating that she was a devoted wife and mother, driven solely by her desire to help others. Ivan, on the other hand, seemed to have a distorted perception of Lyudmila. He often referred to her as pure love, and claimed she was surrounding him with love in an effort to save him from dark forces. The days leading up to the crime seemed peaceful, but something shifted dramatically on the night of August 7, 2024. After returning from their trip to Tarapoto, Ivan and Lyudmila stayed in an isolated cabin, far from the center's main facilities. What happened in that cabin over the following hours would turn a spiritual journey into a nightmare of violence. Now we arrive at the day of the crime, August 8, 2024. On that Sunday morning, something horrific unfolded inside a cabin at Centro dos Mundos. Lyudmila Lazarenko, who was staying there with Ivan Kuzmin, was brutally murdered. Her body was dismembered in an act so savage it shocked the local community and made headlines worldwide. Let's reconstruct the events based on witness statements, police reports, and testimonies. According to accounts, Ivan and Lyudmila spent the night of August 7th consuming ayahuasca, hallucinogenic mushrooms, and possibly San Pedro cactus. At some point, Ivan began experiencing what he later described as strange effects. He claimed that under the influence of the drugs, he saw an evil spirit take over Lyudmila's body, making her move in strange, contorted ways, like a witch. In his delusion, Ivan believed that Lyudmila had been possessed by a demon and that he needed to save her soul. He first attacked her with his bare hands, but soon grabbed a bottle, some sources say it was glass, others say metal, and struck her repeatedly on the head until she lost consciousness. Witnesses just 984 feet away from the cabin heard Lyudmila's desperate screams for help. A guest staying on the third floor of the cabin messaged the center's administrator, Daniel Rivera, writing, "They killed the Russian." Staff and other guests rushed to the cabin, but the door was locked. Unable to enter, they immediately called the police. Inside, Ivan carried out something even more gruesome. He dismembered Lyudmila's body, convinced that she might come back to life and hunt him down. When Pepe Ordóñez arrived, he witnessed Ivan cutting up the body, a scene that left him in total shock. Police arrived shortly after and were met with a horrifying scene. The cabin was in complete chaos, stained with blood, furniture broken, and belongings scattered everywhere. Lyudmila's body showed over 12 deep cuts, multiple lacerations, a skull fracture, and signs of burns. Ivan was half naked, covered in blood, holding a knife, and with a deranged expression on his face, as if he had no awareness of what he had just done. During the arrest, Ivan violently resisted, threatening to harm himself and trying to bite a police officer's arm. One version says neighbors and center workers initially tied him up because of his aggression. Another says the police were the first to confront him, finding him still holding the knife. During the arrest, Ivan made a shocking statement. "I was killing a demon," claiming Lyudmila was possessed and he needed to free her soul.
Lucía,
Sí,
¿te acuerdas de ella? La mataste a Lucía.
sí.
¿Por qué la mataste? ¿Por qué la asesinaste?
Yo tomo ayahuasca.
¿Tomaste ayahuasca?
Tomo ayahuasca y durante ceremonia yo mira en Lucía la energía y para libre su alma.
Lucía también tomó ayahuasca. Los dos tomaron. ¿Ya?
Yo mira la energía.
What could drive a man to commit such violence against a woman he called a friend and pure love? Ivan Kuzmin's arrest was chaotic. After being subdued, he was taken to the Yurimaguas police station in a truck from the Peruvian National Police. Local media videos show Ivan nearly naked and covered in blood, violently resisting while being escorted. At one point, he tried to bite an officer's arm, shocking even the police. What disturbed the local community most was Ivan's eerie laughter during the arrest, a clear sign he was completely out of his mind. After the arrest, the Peruvian National Police and forensic experts from Tarapoto arrived at the Centro dos Mundos to investigate the crime scene. They found drug evidence, including ayahuasca and hallucinogenic mushrooms, supporting the theory that Ivan was under the influence during the attack. A pipe found among Ivan's belongings confirmed the use of hallucinogens. Authorities ordered the center's temporary closure until the investigation ended, although later reports suggested it kept operating. The Yurimaguas community was deeply shaken by the crime. Neighbors and center workers expressed outrage and fear, highlighting the lack of security in rural areas like this, where police presence is limited. Community members demanded swift investigations and called on authorities to increase oversight of spiritual healing centers, which often operate without proper regulation. The crime not only shocked residents but also raised concerns about the dangers of poorly supervised spiritual practices. At the police station, Ivan confessed to the crime, but his explanation was as bizarre as the act itself. He admitted attacking Lyudmila under the influence of ayahuasca and mushrooms, claiming he acted to save her soul from an evil spirit. "I was killing a demon," he repeated, insisting Lyudmila was possessed. Lysenia del Mar, the provincial prosecutor of Alto Amazonas, reported that Ivan and Lyudmila had an argument before the attack, but did not disclose the reason. Ivan's confession, though shocking, did not fully clarify the motive behind the crime. Was he truly in a drug-induced psychosis, or was there something deeper driving the violence? Local community and international media began speculating about the role of Centro dos Mundos and ayahuasca in the tragedy, while Lyudmila's family faced the pain of their loss. After the arrest, Ivan was taken to the Yurimaguas police station, where authorities started fast-tracking the legal process. A hearing to decide on Ivan's preventive detention was scheduled for August 12, 2024, 4 days after the crime. However, the hearing was postponed after Ivan fainted and had to be rushed to the hospital. When the hearing finally took place, the San Martin Regional Court in Peru ordered 9 months of preventive detention for Ivan, charged with homicide. The decision was based on several factors. First, Ivan had no roots in Peru, no home, family, children, or job in the country, increasing his flight risk. Additionally, the severity of the crime, classified as extremely serious by Peruvian authorities, demanded a swift judicial response. Prosecutor Lysenia del Mar stated Ivan could face up to 35 years in prison if convicted. During the hearing, Ivan, represented by a public defender, admitted he knew his actions were criminal and said he would comply with the judge's orders. Interestingly, local sources reported that Ivan received financial support from people connected to Centro dos Mundos while in custody. He was moved to a general cell where he received a mattress, hygiene items, food, and even tobacco, allegedly purchased with help from center members. This raised suspicions that Centro dos Mundos might be trying to downplay its responsibility, especially since the center was not permanently shut down during the investigation. While Ivan faced legal consequences, Lyudmila's family dealt with their grief. 6 days after the crime, on August 14, 2024, Lyudmila's remains were transported from Yurimaguas to Tarapoto, in the San Martin region, where she was cremated. A Spanish friend of Lyudmila's, Lucia, accompanied the process along with representatives from the public ministry. The ashes were placed in an urn and, with assistance from the Russian embassy in Peru, repatriated to Moscow, where her family awaited her. Among Lyudmila's belongings, a diary documenting her experiences in Peru was found, along with a plane ticket to Cusco, a reminder of interrupted plans. The Russian embassy in Peru was notified immediately after the crime and coordinated the legal procedures for repatriating Lyudmila's remains. Lyudmila's husband and one of her daughters traveled to Peru to handle the paperwork, while her other daughter stayed in Thailand. The devastated family seeks answers and justice for Lyudmila as Ivan Kuzmin's case continues through the Peruvian justice system. Lyudmila Lazarenko's murder sparked outrage and debate not only in Peru but worldwide. International media extensively covered the case, highlighting the brutality of the crime and the risks of ayahuasca use in poorly regulated spiritual centers. In Peru, the crime reignited discussions about safety in rural areas and the urgent need for stricter oversight of informal spiritual healing centers. Another controversial point was the use of ayahuasca and other hallucinogens in these centers. The romanticized image of ayahuasca draws thousands of tourists to Peru every year, but the risks are often underestimated. Addiction specialist Vasily Shurov explained that ayahuasca can trigger intense hallucinations and psychotic states, especially in people with pre-existing mental disorders. In Ivan Kuzmin's case, the combination of ayahuasca, mushrooms, and possibly the San Pedro cactus may have amplified his instability, leading to the brutal attack on Lyudmila. The story of Lyudmila and Ivan became a hot topic on forums and social media. Users debate the dangers of centers like Dos Mundos, where the lack of medical and psychological supervision can turn spiritual rituals into tragedies. Many also questioned the responsibility of Pepe Ordóñez and the center itself, which was already facing accusations of harassment and negligence. For Lyudmila's family, the case is a wound that will never heal. Her death was not just a personal loss, but a grim reminder of the dangers that can arise in seemingly peaceful places. The Peruvian jungle, which Lyudmila loved so much, became the scene of her tragic end. Lyudmila Lazarenko's case transcends borders. A woman full of life, passionate about spirituality and nature, had her journey brutally cut short by a man who, under the influence of hallucinogens, believed he was saving her soul. Ivan Kuzmin, now facing up to 35 years in prison, left an irreparable void in the family's life and raised important questions about safety in spiritual healing centers and the dangers of ayahuasca.